What's up, everybody? We have 10 minutes here. Mark and Ryan are having some nonverbal fight over here right now. Anyway, but Ryan Muckenherd is joining us to discuss a little bit of a interesting firearm in history. Interesting is such a bland word, but anyways, I can't think of any other way to describe it right now, which is the HK G11. It came up in a podcast prior, and we thought, why don't we just talk about that? Because it's sort of this, I want to say that at some point when I was playing video games as a kid, the HK G11 was an option in there, and I actually always thought it was made up, never really thought it was real, and it is kind of real, but it's also kind of not real, basically, in terms of like whether you're actually going to see one ever or not. But talk about it. It's super unique.
If there ever was we talked in the podcast before about like the cartoon drawing of something. Mm-hmm. If you told somebody, I want you to draw a spaceman's gun.
Yes.
They may come up with the HK G11.
I wouldn't doubt it.
Yeah. Super wild departure from firearms. Number of different reasons. It was a bullpup, and at the time, bullpups weren't a thing. It fired caseless ammunition, which to this day is still fairly unheard of. Some people may be saying caseless ammunition. Well, isn't that a muzzleloader? And it fired a subbore projectile, so like a super small 4.7 millimeter bullet at a pretty respectable velocity. We wanted to emulate the 5.56 and what it could do. And came with a telescopic weapon sight. Development on this thing began, I believe, in the early 70s. And
I actually want to say it was even sooner than that. I believe like 50s, 60s even,
so
possibly.
That's what I'm reading right here, and this was one of my questions. It says, developed during the late 60s, 70s, and 80s. It seems like it's been kind of a work in progress that never happened.
Yeah. So when you look at it, like it came with an installed telescopic weapon sight. It had a crazy magazine that rode in front of and above the bore. It had this extremely complex, intricate inner working in which the cartridge was presented to the loading mechanism vertically and then rotated and then chambered and then fired. There's no spent case. It's caseless ammunition.
Wasn't it like didn't the ammunition come in a way where it had to be sheared off somehow or something like that?
Yes.
Like it was all one giant stick of ammunition, and then when you needed an individual round, it would sort. Is that how?
No. So the projectile is encapsulated in a block of it's propellant. So I don't want to say like putty, but I'm always reminded of like it's like C4 or something like some sort of. No, okay. That's an example of caseless ammunition. And maybe they did in the initial packaging and the user had to break them off, but they were a contained thing, no external case.
Yeah.
And had to be pulled out of the magazine. There's a plastic cap over the projectile that had to come off, but that did so during the firing sequence. I don't think it did it in the loading sequence. But there's like a containing cap over the top of the projectile. And the cases, I believe, they're not square. They're like a rectangle shape, and I think they have like a beveled edge along them. And then there's this remarkable ratchet mechanism that is the loading mechanism that you actually wound up. There's like
oh, seriously? So it could eventually be unwound?
I don't know if it comes unwound, but you had to spin the darn thing to get it loaded. There's a couple of really old but great videos of the gun actually being fired. And a couple things to note about it. For a sub-bore cartridge, like a tiny projectile, the thing had a tremendous amount of recoil. Like when you watch the guys shooting them, it is extremely disruptive. They look like they're shooting an M14. And it's a small sub-22 caliber bullet at like 3,000 feet per second. Mm-hmm. But there's all this reciprocation going on with the magazine. The magazine comes back, and then the ratchet thing snags a round out of it.
Just a lot of mechanical parts.
A lot of things going on.
It had to have weighed a metric ton.
There's not a lot. So there's like a shell on the outside, and I think you pull the back off of it, and then you pull the guts out. The guts contain what we'll call the action or the reciprocating portion, plus the barrel. And then there's a trigger pack, which isn't uncommon for HKs. They had trigger packs that came off, and that could have been attached to the front or the handguard portion. The magazine itself would then be separate. Telescopic weapon sight was part of the front of the rifle if it came apart. And very goofy. Oh, Mark's got a picture up here. Bayonet attachment.
I know. I like the bayonet.
Yeah. It almost looks so out of place because the gun, if you're not already Googling this, the gun looks like one of those very old over-the-shoulder VHS camcorders with a...
Actually, you about nailed it. I was going to say it reminded me of the Super Shot or whatever from a Super Nintendo, but without the front grip.
Like whatever the Zapruder film was filmed with, I think looks like this. Hearing you describe, I'm looking at a picture of it. I'm hearing you describe how it works, and even while I'm looking at the picture and you're describing all these inner workings, it's still tough to understand.
Yeah.
The magazine is like this long.
That's like 2 feet.
Yeah, it's very long. So the magazine runs above the barrel in a track, and then it reciprocates along with it, and then that thing comes off and snags or shears or cuts a cartridge out of the magazine itself. It's a thing. It's a very bizarre gun. It looks so unconventional that if you didn't see it had a trigger, you wouldn't know it was a gun.
So what came first, the idea that they wanted to shoot caseless ammo, or the idea that they had, hey, we got a weird gun, what ammo are we going to shoot through
caseless
it?
Ammo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And is the caseless ammo just because you're trying to do clandestine operations and not leave a trace?
And weight.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so the whole thing is gone. So yeah, the clandestine part, so you fire your weapon, there's no brass, can't pick it up.
Yeah.
But then it weighs less. So, you have a loaded cartridge, you have the projectile, you have the casing.
So that must be where they came in with the 50-round magazine. Yeah, it held quite a few rounds, it looks like.
Yeah. What's wild is if you look at an FNP90, I almost wonder if some of those folks, there was some idea sharing going on, and FN's you can put the magazine above the barrel, and then you can do this really weird rotation.
Yeah.
Present the cartridge to it.
I am reminded of the P90 when I see it a little bit. And what was it? Who was it made for? What was the point? Was
Soldiers,
it made for
special forces?
Okay.
Bundeswehr.
What?
Yeah, the special forces of Germany.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think the long-term goal was an individual infantry rifle.
Yeah.
But it never went anywhere. It just died. Eventually they went to AKs and not 50 HK 53s, and I get all the numbers mixed up between all the various
that's the thing with
models.
the Germans. They're always doing just letters and numbers.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen anything German where it just has a name on it? Just a regular a name.
Nope.
Besides the Panzer.
Right. Nope, that's the
only
only
thing I
one.
can think of.
But it probably has a number.
Oh, I
designation with it.
guarantee, yeah.
Yeah. So really radical firearm, never took off. Set a very cool and still chased concept of caseless ammo, though, because it still comes up. Or I should say reinventing the package that ammunition comes in. Because today, there's not a ton of caseless stuff going on, but there are new ideas surrounding the case, going to a full poly or a poly and brass blend or poly steel blend. I should note on caseless ammunition, the Daisy Corporation that made BB guns that we all had a caseless 22.
What?
Yeah. It had a propellant embedded, or a projectile embedded in the propellant. I believe they came in little plastic tubes.
Yes.
It was a caseless 22.
We've even contemplated the idea of caseless ammunition when we were on our Rimfire podcast a while back with you and Seth Toy, and we discussed having a bullet that was a 22 caliber bullet that then had a hole hollowed out in the back end of it with the propellant inside. And it is an interesting concept to try and come up with. And I guess the other thing is you got to imagine too. Now I don't know how a round would have been chambered in a gun like this. With the propellant has to have some sort of structural integrity to get the bullet in the barrel, right, and have it be sealed and all that stuff.
Yep.
How does or does the whole thing go in the barrel and then it's sealed off in a different way at the rear?
So it's funny when we say caseless because it's still like a package.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So the package exterior is propellant that has that structure that you're talking about. The whole thing is combustible.
If you held it, it wouldn't be malleable.
Not that I know of. I've never touched the ammunition though.
Yeah,
I've never even seen a G11 other than on the internet. But yeah, the can we call it a cartridge?
I think
the thing that goes bang is a solid structure, projectile embedded in the middle of it, and that whole thing chambers like a cartridge would.
Okay. So it has to have, because what I was getting at was like, I was wondering if somehow the caseless ammunition could bypass some of the complexities that go into cartridge design in terms of the case.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
Because
sure.
if you're always trying to design cartridges, I mean, we've talked so much about cartridges on this podcast, and we talk about, you change the shoulder, you change the neck, you change the body, you change, is it rimmed, is it belted, is it whatever, and it's longer, shorter. And if you remove that from the equation, but then I'm also thinking to myself, well, then how do you get the bullet in? The bullet needs to go in the in the chamber and all that stuff. So it needs some structure around it. And
if you want to use a bigger bullet or make something go faster or whatever, you're going to need more of this, whatever this quote case powder.
Like the shape of the caseless ammunition has to matter, or else if you just make it any shape, it's not going to feed well.
Right.
But I wonder how much, if it matters as much as the shape and all that of brass in your case.
I don't think it does. I don't think it would. I think because
you don't think it would.
No. And if somebody has if somebody has a
stuff.
G11, I'll give you $20 if I can borrow it for a little bit.
That's $20 on the table. In fact, I will double that if you can show up to Vortex with a G11 that we can podcast about here.
Too rich for my blood.
I'll double that.
Okay. I think looking at the way that the propellant works, if you had a chamber that was cut and a bore that was appropriate to it, alignment and positioning, it would be very much the same thing as a muzzleloader. Like we had Luke on with those high-performance muzzleloaders.
Okay, right.
And he's tinkered around with chambers and muzzleloaders, too.
Something about obturation.
Yeah. And so long as you could develop an adequate pressure curve to generate the velocities required to, like, move the bullet down the barrel and then achieve that, you wouldn't need a case. And Luke has done some chamber work on a muzzleloader. So you're loading it from the barrel, the powder goes down loose, but the bullet sits on top of this little chamber thing.
Okay.
So I'm assuming that's what they did with the G11.
Okay.
And there's not a ton of information about the gun either.
It's kind of remained pretty secret.
Yeah.
Do you know what the propellant material was made out of?
Oh, an explosive.
Originally,
I did read, actually, it was a nitrocellulose-based propellant.
Right.
That was changed.
But that was changed.
Yeah, and I'm wondering if that was just environmental thing. So
could be.
If it's nitrocellulose, it's going to attract moisture. If it attracts moisture, it could potentially become inert.
Okay.
And so then they changed it to something else.
Speaking of moisture and inert and all this stuff, I heard that one of the problems that it suffered was the fact that as the barrel would heat up from shooting, it would cause pre-detonation of ammunition.
I had not read that, but
that's what I was hearing. And it's a phrase. It's called. Let me find it here. There's a phrase that they used. Keep talking.
It makes sense, though. I mean, you've got...
cook-off. Oh, yeah.
Cook-off.
Because the magazine is oriented directly above the barrel.
Yeah, which wouldn't be good. You wouldn't want that to happen.
No, and it's
50 rounds above your barrel.
Pretty zippy.
I mean, it's literally cooking it like a frying pan.
Right.
Pretty zippy cartridge, too, this little projectile at, say, 3,000 feet per second. If you've ever shot your AR, like more than 10 times consecutively, and you're holding onto your metal handguard that's vented, it gets awful warm.
So get this. Here's another thing that I thought. We chatted about this a little bit. If you look at the specs of this thing, full auto, it shot 460 rounds per minute. A 3-round burst, you could shoot, and it says, and I don't know if it's a typo, but it says 2,100 rounds per minute. Because, and that doesn't make any sense. You'd think the full auto would be more. But the 3-round burst we're discussing is designed to essentially put enough rounds downrange to incapacitate a threat instead of just one round. And it's designed to do so quickly that the user of the firearm hopefully hasn't been so disrupted from their sight picture that they wouldn't be able to hit the target with any kind of accuracy. Because if you're shooting full auto, you might jump around the target a bit. Here's a really interesting thing, though. Recoil in the 3-round burst is not felt by the weapon's user until after the 3rd round has left the chamber. This is accomplished by having the barrel and feeding mechanism float within the rifle casing.
Phenomenal. So by casing, they're talking about like chassis.
Yeah.
Yeah. The Russians had a rifle called the AN-94 Ninkonov that did something kind of similar. It had a 2-round burst that occurred so quickly that the recoil sequence only occurred like after the fact. So they were able to fire 2 rounds like that.
It's like the most pure...
Double tap.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's interesting. So reciprocating, floating, barrel within the chassis. I wonder why it didn't catch on.
It had to have been. I mean,
or did it?
Yeah.
Or did it? Space gun. Shooting this thing underwater. Random question.
I don't know.
They better.
I mean, the cartridge
that propellant.
Not cartridge package. It would appear is environmentally sound.
Would appear.
Yes. So could it? Sure.
C4 can go underwater, right?
Yes. You can shoot an AR underwater.
Right.
Yeah.
The offer's still on the table. This is more just some, I don't know, this is some good day drinking, talking about cool guns that are very mysterious in nature. Maybe some conspiracy theories around this thing. Who knows? Maybe it is popular. Maybe they invented it for space. And maybe a lot of people use them in space.
Because you wouldn't want those brass cases going all around your space
center.
No,
you wouldn't, because they might turn into little meteorites that would hit the Earth.
But you remember?
And leave evidence.
Not to chew up more time.
You know what? It's
16-minute and 2-second podcast.
Hey, today we're recording on a Friday, guys.
It's Friday.
Episode of The Simpsons.
Speaking of day drinking.
Yeah.
An episode on The Simpsons in which Homer is in space and opens a bag of chips.
I don't think I watched this one.
The chips
sounds awesome.
Fill the cockpit. Homer actually saves the day by floating through the cockpit, eating the chips. I believe that the Germans figured if we could take this gun into space, rather than filling our cockpit of our space shuttle with chips or cases in this case.
Which you cannot eat.
You can't do that.
Mm-hmm.
And a case inadvertently hitting a button, hitting the eject seat. They just went caseless.
Let's make those easy to accidentally hit.
Oh, it's a big red button. You almost want to.
Right.
We talk about it like it looks like a space gun.
Yeah.
I think it was designed from the very beginning to be a space gun.
A lot of strange things going on between the 60s, 70s, and 80s. A lot we don't know about.
Maybe Germany was trying to get to the moon, too.
Maybe they were trying to colonize it. Could be.
What are your thoughts, guys? Like I said, the offer is still on the table. A total of $40 if you can bring a real G11, legit, full on. And we could podcast about it.
I'm in. $60.
60. Whoa. Big time. All right. So maybe we'll. If you're bringing a G11, it's probably pretty worth it. Might throw in a sandwich too. So, cool. Let's hear you guys' thoughts on this firearm platform. It's so cool. I wish we had one here. So, all right. Catch you next time.
Bye.
Bye, everybody. Germany was. Why would they not be trying to get to the moon? Honestly,
there's a lot of questions.
Russia, America, and the one that's always been in the middle, Germany.
Nobody's saying anything.
And that's how they like. That's how Germans like it.
Thinking something.
That's how Germans like it. They kind of like to play under the radar.
Hydrogen car, BMW, Germany.
Heavy water.
Mark.
What, you think I don't know about heavy water?
I don't know.
I know about a lot.
What's
of
heavy
things.
water? I know I've heard of it before. I don't know what heavy water is.
It's
water that sinks to the bottom of the ocean?
It's complex, Jim.
Oh, like I wouldn't get it?
Okay, how do I explain nuclear physics?
It's the water you find...
Is it trihydrogen oxide?
I don't remember. I watched the whole thing on one time. It was completely fascinating.
H3O. There's just more H.
Yeah.
It's the water you have to go to the bottom of the ocean for because it sinks to the bottom. Ever wonder how
For real?
some water is on the bottom of the ocean and some's on the top? How did the ocean determine which water would be on the bottom and which one would be on the top?
Yeah.
Some of that water is probably heavier water.
It gets recycled, though.
Heavy water,
Could be.
if you ever had to store a plutonium rod, a uranium rod,
Oh, right.
heavy water is useful and a byproduct of doing so.
Got it. So it's water that has been contaminated.
Or engineered. Depends on what side of the arms race you're on.
Interesting. And what do you use that water for?
Don't drink it or pour it into the local water systems. Bad stuff goes down.
It is, however, how you make sweet tea.
One caveat.
Suitable for use in sweet tea.
Texas is a big fan of heavy water.
You know, there's something to this.
It reminds
We'll
me
know if we're all
of-
dead by the end of the day.
It reminds
If
me
we
of
were
the
right.
XM8 and XM25 questions that were never asked but answered with weaponry.
the XM8 and the XM25, those are planes, right?
No.
No, I'm thinking of the
guns.
Wait, what? What are the XM8 and XM20?
Humor yourself.
The G11 also looks like the original laser tag guns.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I've seen the XM8. That's from Beretta, right?
FN?
Beretta has a gun that looks a lot like it.
They've got the AR. I can't remember.
Yeah.
What the
Lead
designation
balloon.
is.
Okay, XM8. No, it's from H&K.
Is it?
Yeah. Dude, what is H&K, man?
They've been on the front runner for a long time.
But how long, really?
For
Not
not
as long
that
as,
long.
Not as long as... Okay, the XM25. I've seen this gun before, too. It's like also looks like the weird G11.
Is that the one with the grenade launcher on the bottom, the 25 that you're looking at? That Mark was a very adept.
Look at this.
Yep. So with the 25, smart projectiles, you could program them.
So you shot missiles, heat-seeking
Potentially.
missiles.
Wait, what? Hold on.
Here's the coolest part about the XM25. If you had a target that was inset a building, so inside, right? You're on the outside, target's inside the building, behind a wall. You couldn't shoot through the wall, perfect barricade. You would, from your bandolier pocket, Pelican case, pull out a smart projectile, laser range using the weapon sight on top of the gun, the window, and then bump the detonation distance just beyond that window, 3 feet. Load that into the gun, blouch! Goes through the window, 3 feet in, boom.
Oh, and like this person would be like, if the window is my phone and the person is standing here behind concrete, projectile goes through the window, explodes like a grenade, takes out person over here.
Yes.
Sideswipe. Classic sideswipe.
That's interesting.
It's like, it's kind of
Also
like
seems German.
like mini RPG, kind of.
Well, RPG.
Smart RPG.
Yeah, RPG's a dumb bomb.
Smart PG.
Smart PG, yeah. I don't know. We need to just do an entire conspiracy theories podcast.